As the winter weather retreats into our rearview mirror, New York's roads and bridges are still wearing some of the damage of the season, with potholes aplenty to address. But government leaders, large and small, have been coming out in force to show they're serious about addressing the surface damage quickly and comprehensively. For more on what the state is doing, we're joined by New York State Transportation Commissioner Therese Dominguez. So earlier this month, the governor announced that the state DOT's effort to address potholes in April would include 215 crews and more than 8,000 tons of asphalt as you set your sights on 175,000 potholes around New York just this month. What is your capacity based on? Is this just a product of state funding? Is it available manpower? Or is this maybe a reflection of your accessible raw materials to actually fill these holes?
It's all of that.
Okay.
Right? We have the workforce to do it. And in addition to that, we've got the materials to do it. And Lord knows we have the potholes that need to be filled. We had an incredibly brutal winter. Whether you're talking about the extended number of days that we saw below freezing temperatures across New York State, I think we had some locations across the state had over 90 total days that were below freezing. You know, you have extended periods of cold. The water gets into any crack in a roadway. And as soon as it starts to thaw a little bit, you start to have a breakup of the asphalt itself. And then you have a repeated thaw. So between the record amount of snowfall we had in numerous places across the state, extended periods of cold, thaw cycles, freeze-thaw cycle repeated, and I would say a very long winter. We started plowing snow at the end of October, and we didn't finish. We're still plowing snow in a couple parts of the state, but as of last Monday, we had 4 inches of snow in parts of New York. We were plowing early last Monday. Our roads took a real beating. And need to address it all. So, you know, the governor has been at the forefront of making sure that our roads are in good condition. And last year she announced 2 things. One, she put in $800 million in addition to our record amount of capital funding in the DOT capital program. We're operating on a 5-year plan right now at $34 billion. And she plussed that up, another $800 million, gave us enough money to actually execute what is now one of the most aggressive paving programs in the country, $600 million just this year alone in paving that New York State DOT is going to undertake.
Well, I'm curious, given that funding from the governor with the approval of the legislature, what is the governor's expectation for your response to these potholes? Because I have to imagine if she sees a pothole on maybe her commute to the office, maybe you hear about it, because I imagine the previous guy would have done something like that. So what is this governor's expectation, and do you hear from her about potholes?
So I have to say she's got hands-on, and as she often says, there's not a roadway in New York State that she hasn't driven. You know, I first met her when she was lieutenant governor, and she traveled the state extensively. I think she's got some sort of a record of how many times in road miles she put across New York State, the equivalent of circumnavigating the globe many, many times. So she definitely understands the condition of our roadways. The $600 million allows us to do about 180 paving projects across the state just this year. So when we compound that with, when we add to the amount of projects that we've got already in the queue in our core program, it just means we're able to tackle our roadways in new ways. Everybody wants us out there right now. What we're doing is filling potholes because we're going to be out there just to make the road surface better. Because the next phase of all of this is actually reconstructing and rebuilding a number of these roadways, about 180 in total this summer alone and going into next fall.
Well, yeah, let's talk a little about that, because there's this idea of playing whack-a-mole with the potholes that emerge each year. But in a perfect world, you're hopefully reducing the number of potholes that emerge each year. So what is that strategy? And do you have, say, metrics for yourself or goals for yourself in 2027 and 2028 in terms of the number of potholes that you are hoping to reduce each year?
So potholes are literally something that pop up as a result of the weather conditions, right? And the use of the roadway and wear and tear and everything else. So our goal coming out of winter is always to tackle the potholes right now, because you need to make the roads drivable, right? So tackle the potholes, and then we know where our larger investments need to take place in terms of reconstructing roadways, making them safer to drive on, et cetera, and the long-term durability of our entire transportation network. Those larger investments that we're talking about, for instance, like the work that we're about to start here in the capital region on I-90, are things that actually have to go into engineering, meaning they have to be designed. We have very specific requirements we have to meet. We need to make sure that we're addressing the roadway as completely as we possibly can. Our goal is to preserve as much of the roadway as we possibly can before we actually have to do a full reconstruction of a road. So the bottom line is that we want to make sure that we stretch the dollars that we're given as far as they can go, hitting every part of the state. And that's why about a total of like 2,150 lane miles are actually going to be addressed. And taken together, that is about 4,000 lane miles of renewed pavement that we're going to see in this year alone across New York State.
But I guess in doing all that work, are you able to reconstruct roads or design roads in a way that they won't necessarily have the same pothole problems in the future?
Yes. When we're able to go in and tackle some of the, whether it's an overlay of a roadway or if we have to do a full reconstruction of a roadway, it all depends on how what the wear and tear is, right? Some roadways, they just literally do not last for a variety of factors, right? And you never know until the end of winter, and you really see how they come out, coming out of winter. But all of that said, our job is to make sure that we every year assess the condition of all the roads in across New York State. We have metrics. We actually go out with LiDAR. We look at the condition of the roadway. We map it all out. We understand what's happening, what the wear and tear is, and then we have to address things by risk.
And you mentioned that this was a bad winter. So in terms of the assessment this spring, as all of the snow finally melts, does it seem like the number of potholes or the extent of potholes or something else about the roads is worse this year, or is it kind of par for the course?
It's pretty par for the course given the weather.
Okay. And in terms of maximizing the state's response to potholes, is there any sort of collaboration with local governments and the local highway departments? Because I have to imagine there are instances where a state road and maybe a local road are essentially adjacent together, and if that crew just goes another 100 feet or something, they could take on another pothole instead of sending out another crew. So is there any sort of intermingling of resources like that, or do you have to keep things kind of isolated?
We do a lot of coordination, especially when we know that we have various projects in areas, right? Before we ever go in and do some major work on a roadway, we coordinate with all of the stakeholders, whether it's, a township, the city, et cetera, to make sure that everybody has fair warning. We're going to be there. The neighbors know, et cetera. We put out travel advisories informing the public. We put road signs up. If you drive up 787 right now, it says paving beginning Sunday, right? So a lot of notice. But for the most part, cities, everybody kind of takes care of the roads that they're responsible for. So, for instance, even here in the Capital District, we coordinate with the City of Albany, OGS, because they have a lot of roadways here in and around the Capitol, as well as the county. But we want to make sure that, if there's a road crew that's out there, we're taking care of those roads. And if somebody calls in and we've got a hotline, 1-800-POTHOLES, report a pothole that you see for state roadways. And if it's not us, we'll tell you how we can best share the information or who to call to make sure that the road is addressed.
You mentioned the way of reporting potholes, 1-800-POTHOLE for anyone who's listening and wants to report something. How much of the understanding that you have of the number of potholes comes from those types of reports versus the surveying you and your staff do? And do you think it would make sense to expand the platforms that allow people to report potholes, like letting people go online so that they don't necessarily have to talk to a human, which is, the worst fear of everyone in Gen Z?
There's plenty of online ways that you can actually report a pothole as well. So the 1-800 allows you to do a voice, but it also allows you to log in and share things as well. You can go to our website. It's got the 1-800 number as well as reporting capability for potholes. Yeah, the bottom line is that the system that we have, we actually go out and inspect every single state road come spring. So we understand what the road conditions are. And you know as well as I do, people are not shy about telling us exactly where they have encountered a pothole, and we take it very seriously, and we go out and we inspect it immediately, and we for pothole filling, we get out there as soon as possible. So we've got 215 crews across the state that are tackling thousands of potholes right now. We've got a full scale, full blitz for the month of April that we're undertaking to really get to as many potholes. We're hoping at least, our metric got us to about 175,000 potholes we anticipate filling in the month of April alone. But we'll get them all.
So you have about 2 weeks left during this period where the state is not liable for any damage that happens to cars as a result of potholes on state roads. And this is different than what localities have to deal with. They have that responsibility all year long as they're made aware of the existence of a pothole. What do you think about that difference in liability standard? Does that make sense to you?
It's what's in law right now, and so that's the way we operate, and it's been a good system so far.
Maybe not necessarily for drivers.
Well, for the drivers that we have to have time to actually fix the roads.
Yeah. So, is there a practical way to potentially expand the liability and then say, though, well, the state can't be expected to fix a winter road if the temperatures are too cold or if there's snow on the road? I mean, is there some sort of middle ground that you think might make sense from a practical implementation perspective?
Well, just think about it in New York alone. Like we still had snow.
Sure.
In last week in second week in April. So you have to give enough time for one, identify what's coming up, right? Because potholes are still being created.
Sure. And
then time to actually do the work and remediate it. And as we go forward, you just never know what the rest of the weather conditions are going to provide. The bottom line is that people report them, just like they do in New York City, just like they do in cities across upstate New York.
Sure.
Rochester, everybody gets out there. Because the winter's been so harsh, you have seen a number of cities take aggressive positions on their city roads. And I think we've got a good way of handling it right now.
Well, lastly, the Trump administration is currently withholding about $73 million in federal funds, about 4% of the highway dollars that New York gets from the feds. Is that having any immediate impact on your operations, or are you forecasting any problems due to interruptions of this flow of money?
Look, the bottom line is that it's, New York has constantly followed the federally mandated rules for commercial driver's licenses across the board.
And that you're referring to, this is the complaint they have about the licenses for undocumented New Yorkers.
Correct. Yeah. And that's their basis for withholding funding. Look, it's directed at the Department of Motor Vehicles. They're the state agency that's responsible for licensing. But the impact is on state transportation funds. And the administration is threatening to withhold those funds. And it does have real impacts across the board. It impacts the safety of what we're talking about, the safety of our roadways. So any and all federal funds that we receive in the state of New York are critical to our entire transportation system, but most importantly to our core funding, which is directed at roads and bridges. And just like we're talking about, you have harsh winters in New York. We have harsh winters in New York. We have got to have the ability. The governor has been incredibly generous in the legislature in providing those funds, but we match those funds with federal funds wherever we can. If those funds are withheld, it really does impact the safety of our overall program. At the end of the day, we're going to fight back. That's what we've done, whether it's, the withholding of gateway funds or the withholding of Second Avenue subway funds. We'll litigate it. We've won. We expect the same outcome, that, the basis for this is not justifiable. But, it's just unfortunate that we have to spend additional time, energy on all of these things that are, pretty standard fare.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this conversation. We've been speaking with State Transportation Commissioner Therese Dominguez. Commissioner, thanks for visiting us in the studio.
Thank you, Dave.
Support for the Capitol Press Room comes from O'Donnell & Associates, a public affairs firm providing strategic guidance to businesses and nonprofits on navigating policy and regulatory issues. More information is available at o'donnellsolutions.com.